All right, everybody. Well, welcome to this month's Connector. Glad to see you guys here. And today we're going to be talking about the Flight Training Experience Survey that AOPA brings to you almost every year. You may know that we took a break last year because of what was going on with COVID, and we instead did the Flight
Yeah.
Training Experience Project. So today, what we wanted to do was talk a little bit about the Flight Training Experience Survey. So before we jump into that, just quick introductions of who we've got here with us. Um, Obviously, I am joined by Elizabeth Tennyson, our Executive Director of the You Can Fly program. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. And also, our producer, but also someone who is heavily involved in running the survey. Stephen Schroeder's here, our coordinator with You Can Fly,
Hello.
and the survey expert as well. All right, so whoops, what did I just do? There we go. That was scary. All right, so real quick before we get started, I want to thank Sporty's Pilot Shop for being a sponsor of the Connector. And just in case you didn't know, Sporty's has a dealer program. You can see the details right here on the screen. Wholesale pricing, low minimums for doing that, same-day shipping. So if you're looking to get a sort of a pilot shop going at your school, this is a great place to check it out. Look at sportys.com/dealer. Or as I always like to say, brought to you by Sporty's. So today's agenda, we've got the Flight Training Experience Survey. We want to talk about, especially if you don't know, what is it? How can it help you? How can you get the most out of it? And how can you promote it? And then finally, some tips for success in doing well with it. So I'm hoping that you guys will find this really useful. And of course, we'll be asking questions and asking for uh, your participation. So please be ready.
Hey,
All right. So
Chris.
to start, yes.
So you're talking about the survey, but I think probably one of the things the schools are most interested in are the awards at the back end of the survey. So
Yes.
definitely we use this information that we collect to make those awards. And I'm sure you're going to talk about that a little bit down the road, but
I absolutely am. You're right. I'm remiss in saying that I didn't put the Flight Training Experience Survey and Awards program because maybe I'm a little too deep in it, and so I just made the assumption. I know that that's all part of it. So very much true. And so what I did want to start with was just an idea of the customer service experience, because really the survey and awards are all based on customer experience, and they're based on the customer experience. The survey really measures the customer experience that your customers see at your school. And one example I love to give is in my own flight training. There was a school that I'd gone to do my instrument rating. I'd finished my private at a little 141. They didn't do instrument ratings, so they said just go across the hallway and talk to the folks over there. You can do your instrument rating there. And I walked in the door as a brand new private pilot. Walk in the door, and I remember feeling like I just walked into the saloon where the two doors go. And everybody stopped and just stared at me, and that's what it felt like. It was very intimidating at first, and it was kind of scary. And unfortunately, that's an experience. When I share that, it is not unusual that other people will feel the same way going someplace new and kind of getting those looks of like, who are you? Now, it turns out that they were actually very friendly and welcoming, but just that initial part of that, it was just, I guess they hadn't thought about that or whatever, but they were a very very friendly flight school, but just didn't come off that way for that first impression. And it could have very easily ended up in me just walking out and going someplace else. So something to think about. We want to harness the aviation passion that so many of us have, and then polish that with business and customer service training. So let's do a quick poll here, a quick survey. I guess really it's a yeah, we'll call it a poll. Why not? Which best describes your participation in the flight training experience survey? And you can hopefully select all that apply. So Stephen, if you can go ahead and roll that.
There we go.
And then we'll see what you guys are thinking. Are you a current participant? Have you done it in the past? And if you did the select all that apply, you can select both of those if that happens to be the case. You've thought about it, but you just haven't gotten around to it or never heard of it. So we'll see how that goes there. And I'm just looking to see, I know that we can see the results. Oh, it's in the chat, isn't it? That's what I'm thinking of. Let's take a look there.
Pretty sure I can post it once it's done.
Yes, I just wanted to see, because I knew that there was a way for us to watch and see what everybody's thinking. There it goes. All right, so I see that a few folks haven't heard of it, so I'm glad you're here so that we can help you learn more about that. I'll give you guys just a moment longer. And then I've we got a person that's done it in the past.
There we go.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we're currently at around 50-50. If you haven't had a chance to answer, now's the time to do it, because we're going to close it in just a moment. Hey, good to see you, Jamie. Okay. All right, Stephen, let's go ahead and I guess let's close that.
Yep.
All right, so we've currently got the sort of 50-50, and I do know that Jamie just joined. I know that she has definitely done that in the past, and so we might ask her a question here momentarily.
Pretty sure Jamie's in one of the photos we might be using today.
I believe she might be. All right, so let's go ahead to the next slide here. So what is it then? So for the folks that aren't familiar with it, I know, Jamie, you are, and so be ready because I'm going to ask you a question. So what is the Flight Training Experience Survey? Basically, it's a customer satisfaction survey for schools and CFIs, and we'll be able to give you a little preview of that. Stephen and I we get way deep into this thing and the tool that it is. It is based on AOPA's research into the flight training experience. And by the way, if you're interested in any of this stuff, notice I put the link at the bottom of every one of these slides, aopa.org/FT survey, flight training survey. And the AOPA's research from probably about 10 years ago now has 4 areas that it focuses on, which is educational quality, customer focus, community, and information sharing. We will delve into those a little later. We talk about tips on how to do well in the survey, but that survey, that research was the basis for where the survey came from, and it's been around since I think 2014 now. So it's been, let's go to the 7th year, I guess then. So it's been a good ways, and we've definitely evolved it as time has gone on. Just so you know, it is every year for the past at least 3 years. It's statistically analyzed, evaluated, and refined. We really look to try to figure out which questions are really getting to the heart of what is helping to differentiate good schools from schools that are, not that they're all not good, but it's like the sort of the top schools versus other schools. And so the other part is that it is anonymous for your customers. So if they can choose at the end of the survey to click yes, I want to share this, and they'll share all the responses with you at the end. You'll get that on a report card, or they can say no, I want to be anonymous, and so then we would just use either de-identified information or just tell you that they chose not to share. So it's up to them on whether they want to share it or not. Elizabeth?
Yeah, Chris, so those 4 areas that you pointed out from our research, I'd just like to add that those were the areas that were found to make the biggest impact on student success. So whether or not they finished their training, how they felt about their training, all of that, those were sort of the 4 key areas that made the difference. And of course, as a flight school, you impact their experience in all those areas, but some really in particular. Customer focus, clearly that is something that you can provide and nobody else can. So when Chris says that they come from research and that they're focused on these areas, that's why they're focused on these areas. They make the difference.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elizabeth. And then one of the things, of course, people like to ask is how long is it? Like, because it used to, in the past, it was long. I mean, we had 20, 30 questions. It was really long. We have, over the past couple of years, we have gotten it down. So now we are down to you can evaluate a CFI, or you can evaluate a school, or you can do both. It's just like sort of 2 halves of the survey. And so how long is it for either a school or a CFI when a customer goes to evaluate them? It's just 12 questions. So it's 12 questions that are a kind of a thing where you kind of rank, sort of always or whatever, or great or whatever, that sort of thing. And there is one net promoter score one, which you might be familiar with, where it says, it's like, would you recommend this to a friend or a family, that sort of thing. It's got one of those in it. And then there's one open response box. Stephen, do you remember exactly how it's phrased? It's something along the lines of tell us whether or not, I think it's tell us whether or not you would recommend this school or this CFI for an award. It's like, so would you recommend them? And then they can write whatever they want in there.
Right. Yeah. And instead with a box, they kind of just write in their however much they want or however little they want about their experience in
Yeah.
training.
And
So
actually, some of that's some of the most enlightening things that we see too, is like that
Yeah.
part is really useful. And in fact, when it comes to the award process later, we use those. That's how we have the selection committee. They read those comments, de-identified. We take all of the information about what school it is or what
right.
CFI it is, and they read those, and that's how they determine
And
a big part of how they determine who the regional or national best winners will be, using those things.
was the blind committee, so they don't have any identifiers at all, just the raw information and comments.
Exactly. So one of the things we also wanted to mention, though, as we said, we've spent a lot of time, and you can feel free, if you want to go in and even see the questions, feel free to go in And don't take a fake survey, but you can kind of just click through and just not answer things. That's why I did it actually yesterday in preparation for this. I was going and reviewing again, so that way you don't put a false one. I literally was like test whatever, and just made it very clear that this was not a real response, but I could see what was in it. So feel free to take a look. There's nothing wrong with that. But we did want to mention that there are some limitations to the survey. Just please be aware. It is driven by data. In other words, that when we make the awards at the end, we only have the data that we're given. We don't have, sometimes we'll get folks that'll call, they're really concerned, like, hey, did you know this school this? Well, we don't know because we have the data that's in what we're given. So we need to know. So please put reviews in for the good schools and whatever. We want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to hear all of it. And then it is not a professional accreditation too. It's like one thing I would love to eventually get there is something like that, but this is really just a customer service thing. So it's a customer service award that you're getting, and so don't think of it in terms of like this is now an official school. It's just one that their customers have said that they really like them. We do take measures to verify data. We do look, we examine, we've got rules, we've got things that we're allowed to do. So we very much dig into the data and look for things. So please just be aware that we are doing that. We do take a look and try to make sure that the data is genuine. And the last part is, the biggest part is, Stephen, how many people are on our team, basically?
There's 3 of us.
So there's three people. We often get someone's like, you should go visit every school in the country. I'm like, we have 3 people and no budget. So, it's like, that's not going to happen. Unfortunately,
we get the help with the committee parts. We get people to come in and help with that, and we get some data analysts to help us with sorting some of the stuff too. So it's a little bit of outside help, but mostly it's 3.
Exactly. And so, and then you're right, exactly right. We do get people from around AOPA that'll help us. We get, obviously the marketing team will help us by sending out, we'll get the emails, but that's just part of one of the many things that they do. So really, when it comes down to it, it's 3 of us running this program. All right. So Jamie, I'm hoping I think you're still on there.
There she is.
Yes. And if anybody else here has done it in the past as well, we want to know, how can the Flight Training Experience Survey and Awards help you? Jamie, your picture's right in the middle of it. It's like it just happened to be from the last time that we did this. Can you give us an idea of potentially how it helped you?
Oh my gosh. The amount of recognition that I received and validation, just personally and professionally, was amazing. I just, it was actually changed the trajectory of my business, and I'm eternally grateful for what my students said about me and about how they recognized my hard work and dedication to the profession. So yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out individually to people. And what I did was that I reached out. I sent an email to every personal with their name. I didn't copy and paste it. And I sent a personal email to every person saying, remember that time that you landed, or we went to Talkeetna or whatever. And I think that was the key right there, was just being as personal as I always was. So yeah, I never used a cookie cutter approach with any student.
That's good to know. So for the promotion thing, we'll talk about later. Thanks, Jamie. And just so you know, Jamie is she's won best in her region multiple times. She was national best flight school. Actually, was it national best CFI a couple of years back. So yeah, so Jamie definitely has been consistently done well in these awards. So she's definitely one to get advice from if you're interested, except if you're in Alaska, then maybe not.
Yeah. So yeah, and I just have to say, I worked really hard this past year. I got my MEI, my double I just got my ATP multi-engine, ATP single engine, and last week I found out that I won the citation Cessna 525 type rating down in California next month.
That's awesome.
Wow, congratulations.
Wow.
Good, as
impressive.
Usual. Very cool.
Thanks.
So Jamie, you actually hit on a lot of the things that I was going to mention. And anybody else, actually, please let us know in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand on the thing and let us know if there are other ways that you found, if you've done it in the past and found that it was useful to you. One of the things that we wanted to mention here is that, how can it help you? Well, one thing is, we provide a report card to you. So it's like, if you get a minimum of 5 evaluations or 5 people filling it out on your behalf, and they complete enough of it, has to be a complete response, we will send you a report card. And in fact, I know coming up on the next slide, I don't know if you want to, Stephen, go ahead and put that link that we had for the report cards. Just put that up in the chat so people can check that out. But we send a report card. It is a summary of the direct customer feedback. So it's free. There's no charge for this. This is not a program. We don't make any money off of it or anything. We literally are just doing this trying to help schools. And so we will send you this report card by email. And it has a breakdown of all the questions that were in the survey. And you can see just a sample here of there are 2 questions under the educational quality section. It says the aircraft were in good condition, and it shows you what the potential responses were. It shows you how many this school in this case got 10 for strongly agree that the aircraft were in good condition, 1 agree. It breaks you down with a percentage, and then it even shows you your rankings. Like your score was a 3.4. The national average on this question was a 2.6. The regional average for the schools in your region was a 2.4. So it breaks it all down for you, and it gives you that ranking. And the big thing that we've heard in the past from schools is that this is great for strategic planning, that they look at this and kind of go, where are we strong? How do we keep doing that? Where are we weak? What can we do to fix that? And they use it for planning for the next year as it comes up.
Can
Did
I
you guys
just,
go? Yeah.
yeah, can I just mention something? So these questions that you're seeing here on this example, you might find yourself thinking, well, of course the aircraft are in good condition, or really how important is that? So Chris said right at the beginning that we used to do a really long survey, which we did. In order to get to a shorter and more manageable survey, one of the things we did was we analyzed the impact of all those different questions. So we used to have a lot of different ways at getting at things like how well maintained is the school's equipment. We were able to reduce all of those to sort of one question that had the greatest impact on outcomes and results, and as well as on, how students actually do at a school. So when you read the survey, you think, how are you going to measure my business in 12 questions? As it turns out, there's a lot of statistical overlap in different ways of asking a question. So there's been a lot of thought and a lot of research that's gone into exactly which questions get asked. So I just thought I should point that out for you because it has implications in your report card. It has implications beyond the question itself. So when you look at a question like that, it's a good idea to think, okay, overall, what's the quality of the equipment in our school? Because that's really part of the answer that you're getting there.
And to tell you, I felt a little bit like this. Is it Marie Kondo, the person that goes through and they get rid of stuff? It was hard for us. We had a lot of these questions in there. We were trying to be really specific, and it was Liz actually on our statistics team that helps us run and do all the analysis on this. And she was the one going like, you don't need it, and we just had to let go. And it was hard, but she showed us the statistical evidence that said these questions, this is the one you need. These other ones, they aren't. You don't need to know that to get to where we're trying to be. Then to figure that out. So yeah, it was a tough process. What you can learn, obviously, areas of strength and improvement. I think I mentioned there is the NPS score, Net Promoter Score. The big thing is with those free responses, we hear often from schools that they'll find out, how are your CFIs or staff doing? There was one school that had done it, and they found out that they didn't realize that their front staff was on their phones, when people would come in, because they're not always around, like the managers are doing other things, and so they didn't realize this. They found this out from the free responses and addressed it and fixed it. So there's little things you can learn by having people fill these out. And then of course the perception of your facilities and equipment. So it's that overall picture you can get to find out just how you're doing. Right. Remember, the key here is to get a report card. You just have to have at least 5 evaluations, at least 5. For the most part, almost all the criteria here is 5 evaluations. There is one that goes up to 10, and we'll talk about that just momentarily. So what I wanted to ask just really quick was to give you guys a moment, and maybe I would love to get whether it's in the chat or if you're willing to raise your hand, Stephen put a link to the example of what that report card looks like, a full report card. We just wanted to know, what do you think, how might this help your planning? Where could you guys potentially see this as being something that would be useful to you?
Do you think we could get that link in the chat section as well? I think that might be a little easier to, it's already there. Yep. Disregard. Yep. All right. Thanks, Stephen.
Yep, did that.
Yeah, trust me, I didn't want to have to, I figured people wouldn't want to copy that sucker down.
Yeah.
So there's really a lot of data in here. I mean, this isn't like half a page of generalizations.
It is pretty robust, the amount of analysis and it dives into with responses we get.
Yeah.
And what's important to keep in mind too is this, like the question that you brought up, Chris, is the example, with the condition of the aircraft. This is through the eyes of your customers and your students, how they perceive it. So, how all the stuff works because you're with it every day. This is what they perceive it as when they come in to your school and what
That's a
their
really
experience
good
is.
a really good point, Stephen, because one of the things that we certainly find is people coming into a flight school for the first time may not really know much about aviation at all. I
Mhm.
remember being in training and there being some little drill holes in the 152 that I was flying, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, it's going to fall apart," because I would never do that to my car. Well, as it turns out, they were cosmetic and minor and a good idea. But as an incoming customer, you don't always know that, and it's
Right.
really helpful to be able to look at your school with fresh eyes, someone from the outside.
Here we got, so Jen just mentioned here, I think it'll help with scheduling, flight lesson time management, if the student renter feels welcome, safe, and if they're loyal and advocates for our school. So perfect. That's I think that would be something you really could get out of that, in the sense of that general perception that your customers are having as they walk in. So absolutely, I totally agree with you, Jen. And I think you totally would see that. I'll give somebody else, let's go another moment here. One thing I was mentioning too is we have to remember too that because we're all experienced in aviation, we're used to the way things are. So I remember that too, the first time going to see the 172 that I was going to learn to fly. And number one, I remember literally in my head, before I even knew what kind of airplane I was going to fly, just thinking, please let it be a low wing, please let it be a low wing, not a high wing. And I walked out and it's a 172 and I was like, oh.
Oh
And then
no!
you get into it, and this is in the late 1990s. It was a 1980. It was a P model 172, and so I remember thinking, like, this thing's old and it smells funny. But of course, we get used to that, right? But not everybody does. So it's almost like, is there a way to set that expectation, or is there something we could do to make these airplanes a little nicer? We
Yeah.
do know that a lot of schools will use like their good airplane for discovery flights, and then when you start training, okay, well now we'll get you in the one we actually use. So just keep those things in mind. All right. So how can it help you as well? This is the part that Elizabeth kind of mentioned that Jamie has done really, really well in, which is the awards program. We do have an awards program. The survey is currently running right now. It goes from May 15th. It's already open. It goes until July 15th at noon Eastern time.
Right.
And so Stephen, back me up on all this stuff because I know that you're well versed in all the details. But the big part is exactly once that closes, then we start the analysis process, and we take that and we do a multi-step process where we analyze the multiple choice, we'll call it, and then the free response through a blind committee. And from that, we are able to get out two levels of awards. We have a distinguished. If you do really well, it's usually like last year or 2 years ago, 2019, the top third. If you performed in the top third out of the field, you get the distinguished school or distinguished CFI. And then using that blind committee, we take the top from that part and run it through a blind committee process. And that's where we determine our regional best. You can see the regions there on the map. And then from those regional winners, at the end of that, we pick out one national best winner. And that's something that, like I said, and Jamie, we're lucky enough to have her on the call. She has done well with that. So that's part of that process. And so this year, Stephen, did you maybe want to talk about the award eligibility, just to remind them of those details?
Right. Yes. So I think in the past we were doing, it was 5 evaluations to be eligible for the awards. We were finding with the results we got in previous years that your schools versus independent CFIs draw a lot more responses. So it's going to be a minimum of 5 responses to get a report card. Everyone who has at least 5 gets a report card. But to be eligible for the award as a school, you need 10 evaluations. For CFIs independently, it's still only 5 to be
Right.
eligible for the awards.
Or school CFIs too. So CFIs at your school only need 5, but for the school
Right.
itself as an entity, it's 10.
Right. Yeah, the students can vote for individual CFIs they love over the school, so they can do both.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I know one thing, I think, Stephen, you've been involved in this too, is going out and trying to get testimonials. We've asked people, like, after they win, did it affect you? And you heard Jamie just mention that. But do you remember seeing like big bumps?
Yeah, we got a lot of email responses back from the 2019 winners. And a lot of them saw large bumps to their business. Some were prepared, some were not. Some were like, we have waiting lists. We're not sure what to do with all the sudden influx of students. People were traveling longer distances to come to those schools because they'd heard about the awards and had seen the stuff posted on our website about it afterwards. So it could be a pretty significant bump depending where you are.
Absolutely. And in fact,
But,
we've heard stories of people flying from multiple states away, coming to train there. So
yeah,
it's not unusual.
yeah,
And one of the things I mentioned is it could be a mixed blessing if you're not ready, because there have been in times in the past where it's like they get such an influx, all of a sudden you're overloaded and have a waiting list. So that's just, always be thinking, how do I ramp up? That's something
yeah.
important.
If you need, be prepared.
Yes,
Hey,
be
Jen
prepared.
has a question in the chat, and I think it's a really relevant one to where we are. She wants to know, will they know before the cutoff if they have hit the 5 or 10 number so they can do a last minute push if they have to?
Great question. For the CFIs, every time an evaluation gets filled out for a CFI, one of the things that the customers do is they have to put an email address in. And so when that response is registered, it's the system, Qualtrics is what we're using, sends an email to them letting them know, hey, you got a response. So the CFIs will have an idea all along. Every time they get a evaluation, they'll have an automatic email, assuming that the student put in the correct email address for that CFI. For the school, yes, we will do that. We will run a report usually with a couple weeks to go, and we'll do a quick report on that, and then we go and look to see for schools that are close to it, and then we will send an email to you just letting you know, like, hey, you're almost there. You've got however many, a couple more to go. So we'll let you know to kind of push it up. So yes, we do that, and that is something we've done in the past. And we plan on doing it again. You're welcome, Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah, love your comment there, Jamie. You had people coming all the way from Utah and California to train with you in Alaska after you won an award.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's amazing.
And that's definitely on the schedule about midway through the process. So 3 to 4 weeks after we've been open is to go through and pull a list of schools and run those reports.
There you go.
And I think we've also got marketing scheduled with like a 10-day to go reminder email this time around.
And the big thing is just getting that word out. So hopefully that's the
Yeah.
biggest part, is letting everybody know. And I see Pam is typing a question too.
And this does count for all the students you've had in the last year. So if you had someone who was training before and finished up in the last year, if they're still currently enrolled, it counts for all your students in the last year.
So in
And
other
they
words,
don't
reach
have,
out to them. Yeah.
right. Yeah, definitely. Take advantage of your own email lists to let your students know, even if they're not at the flight school every day anymore. And it's not just people looking at a primary rating, right?
Exactly. It could be
Right.
anyone doing any training there. So it could be flight reviews, instrument rating, commercial, CFI, any type of training that they've done there with you. That's okay. And it could just be something where they just came in. Maybe it wasn't even a flight review. It's just like I'm rusty and I just wanted to go up. That's okay. So as long as they've done training, they've been a customer there for flight training, that counts, and that's okay. So yeah, don't think of it as just people taking a private.
So I love Pamela's comment here. Please ensure your CFIs read and understand the syllabus they use in training. So I think, Pamela, that goes to a point that's one of the many things we learned in our research, that students who use a course that has a syllabus, and especially if they know what that syllabus is and their flight instructor applies it, that can really help them be successful. So I suspect that's why you've put that note in there, and you're absolutely right.
Cool. We wanted to talk a little bit more about how do you get the most out of it. Well, obviously, as I think the message is already coming through, you need to participate. So you go to aopa.org/FT survey. You can share that with them. You actually can get a specific link to the survey. You just go, you can click on it and then get the actual link. So you can say, literally just tell your folks, just click here. But if they send them there's a big button that says take the survey right here. Just 5 responses for a report card. For the schools, a little bit more, 10 to get the award, or to be eligible for an award, I should say. One of the things that we often hear, we'll get folks that are concerned saying, well, I'm a little school and there's this big school that gets 50, 80 responses and I'm only getting 10 or whatever it might be. And honestly, usually it's I shouldn't say it's a little school. It's usually the other way around. The big schools are the one that complain about little schools. They say it's not fair because they only got 10 and I got 50, and so therefore it brings me down. And it's actually not true. Liz, who does the analysis for us, did a regression analysis and found that the more responses that you get, the better your results tend to be. The sort of the common thought is that, well, if I only got the minimum number of responses and I was able to get, those just to sort of cherry pick those people and do well, then I'll do better than somebody that gets 80, where it's much more variable in what they might get. But it turns out that if you have the small number, one poor response can tank your results, whereas the more you get, it definitely averages it out. So getting more, there's a definite statistical correlation, and it showed a positive result in the sense the more you get, the higher your results will tend to be. So just be hopefully confident in that. The other part is get a broad range of customers. And Elizabeth, I just saw that you were just thinking something.
I was just going to say, but there is an adjustment for the big school versus the small school, right? If I only have 2 CFIs at my school and I only have 20 students at my school, I'm not going to get 80 responses. But there is an adjustment built in for that, right?
We look at some of that. Yes, we take the averages, and there is some, they try to do some statistical stuff to it, but overall it's getting more is better, and at the same time you can do well. So it's worked out. It's not an issue. So it's not, I don't think it's unfair. And that's why we have that bar at 10. We figure that over the course of 12 months, we saw that schools can easily get 10 responses. That's not uncommon at all. One thing that we wanted to say too is when you get your report card, it might be a good idea to view it with an open mind. I know sometimes we like to get things and we just want to see the praise, and then we see the negatives and we're like, no, but try to look at those and say, well, what is this negative? Is it something that I can work on? And in some cases, we know that we get reports every once in a while. Somebody said, there's this person, they trained with me 4 years ago. They haven't been a customer since, and they keep going in there and putting it on or whatever, or they say something like that, or somebody said something really negative about it. And, it's like, and that has to kind of get averaged out. But just try to view it with an open mind. In some cases you might know what's going on there. In other cases, it might be like, I didn't realize that, like the school I told you about with their staff, and that actually worked out really well for them. They were able to correct something that they didn't realize was going on. And the other part is have your customers encourage them to evaluate all the schools that they've been to. We often get reports that my customer went to this other school, it was awful, they came to me, and so we're trying to do it right. You hear this a lot. And so that's like so don't be afraid to say, you know what, evaluate all your schools. It's like every school you've been to, don't think you just have to tell them just do mine, but let them know anybody that you've trained with in the past year, it's okay to evaluate them too. So that way we get hopefully good responses across the board, and truthful ones and genuine ones is what we're looking for. So, all right. Any thoughts there, you guys, on any of that? Okay. So the big part is promote this thing, right? So we wanted to get an idea from you in the chat, if you're willing, or raise your hand. What are some ideas that you can think of right off the bat that you might be able to do to promote? And I will give you some ideas here in a moment, some other things we thought of, but I'd be curious to know what would be a way that you guys potentially think you could promote it at your school? What are some ideas that you might want to share that other folks could benefit from as well? Give you a moment to think about that.
We've got all the variety of channels across the boards, the emails, social media, all that kind of stuff. You can use to market your school. You can put this out through those channels.
Yeah. So Brett just mentioned doing a QR code on your brochure. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah, it is a great idea.
Social media, of course. Yeah, great place to get it out there. I'm curious, do you have particular channels you like to use, Jen, for social media that you think are effective?
I could type.
No, Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
There's nothing like trying to type when people are watching, Chris.
Oh my goodness. That's also because I'm like half looking it down here and all that good stuff. So.
And yes, Jen, you can talk if you want to just
feel free.
mute your microphone. Go ahead. And Pamela says send an email blast. Definitely take advantage of those email addresses that you collect, and let them do something for you.
I think the biggest thing that we're getting at here is that almost the theme on all these is make the ask. Ask your customers to do this for you. We've had it in the past where some folks have done well and received an award, and they were totally surprised. They had no idea. That's every once in a while that happens. But for the most part, schools that do well are the ones that are asking, please fill this out on our behalf. It doesn't, and you don't have to be like, you got to fill out a good one. Just fill it out. Encourage them to do that. So let me give you a few ideas that we've seen in the past. You guys hit on a bunch of them already. We do have a promotional kit that will give you some help with some of those things. So we do have, and it's available on aopa.org/FT survey. It's under the flight training providers tab. Stephen, does that sound right?
Sounds right. I'm gonna double check.
There's some tabs in the middle of the page there, and you can click and it'll give you the toolkit, but it's got email templates. We've got some messaging points that you could just use and modify and use how you like, sample social media posts, posters, and Stephen, help me out here. Prizes, because I know that you've been you've been collecting the prizes. What are the prizes that we have
Prizes.
this year for the people that participate?
Ah, yes. So we do have a sweepstakes that you get signed up for when you participate in the survey. Where are
That's for
the
the customers, for your
prizes?
customers.
Yes, for the customers.
Important distinction, yeah.
Yes, it is an important distinction.
If you're lucky, you guys get an award, but
Yes,
they get good.
Let's see.
and this year again, with the headsets are available again.
Lightspeed
Lightspeed headsets
headsets.
have offered for the national and regional winners. They're giving them headsets.
And they are beautiful. That's been
Yeah.
a really nice thing to be able to give to the national and regional winners in the past.
The biggest thing, feel free to use that to encourage them too. Like you get a chance of winning an award. I know there are some car rental certificates in there, Stephen. I think there's,
So
is it
some
a,
flight bags.
Yep.
God, I'm trying to find the list real quick.
okay, we'll look it up and I'll chat on the other part and then just let me know when you find that. So the CFIs, I mentioned before, the CFIs do receive an email with each review they get, so that can help them have an idea, and we'll do that follow up with schools. We will be sending out a few emails, marketing emails, trying to promote it, but the biggest thing is for you to reach out to your folks, your customers, and help us do that, get the word out. There are articles online. Feel free to use those. Take the articles we've got on AOPA.org and use them in what you send out so people can learn more about it. It saves you the time in having to type about it or giving them that link. But the biggest thing is make the ask. Some schools in the past, and there's nothing wrong with this, they would provide incentives for people that take them. So you can see in the picture that I've got here, they had t-shirts made up. They would give like half an hour, an hour of free sim time or something like that. They came up with some sort of incentive they thought that would encourage people to do that. This was supposed to be all inclusive. Just notice, I'll just fix that.
There we go.
And then
we had a lot of generous donors who help us promote this and provide the sweepstakes prizes for the people
so
who
what
take
are
the
they,
survey.
Steve? Got the list there?
Yeah, so Sirius XM put in a 1-year Pilot Express subscription. We've got Sporties gets a 12-month membership and their flight crew at the platinum level. Pilot Workshops put in a VFR program. Aircraft Spruce has a gift card they're giving out. Our own AOPA Pilot Gear Store has their ProTech laptop backpack, which is stuffed with a bunch of things in it. So it's kind of like a gift bag, surprise bag. Avis did give us rental coupons for rental cars. Jeppesen put in 10 aviator flight bags again this year. And then Aerospace Reports is throwing in a title search package for folks to take advantage of.
Very cool.
That's all the big stuff. So yeah, some very generous sponsors.
So we are we are really happy about all that. So that's stuff that you guys, that your customers could win, and then don't forget the headsets for the regional and national best winners. The other thing we want to make sure you do is make sure that you let the folks complete in private. We do hear about it. Sometimes we'll get schools where the schools they were kind of like, here, take this and let me see what you're writing. Don't do that. We ask you to let them take it in private.
That doesn't work to your advantage anyway, does
Yeah.
it, Chris? Right?
No.
Because sooner or later, those customers are going to come tell us, hey, this is how they behaved. And that is not a good customer experience. So
Not to mention, you could just damage the relationship yourself with your customers too. And we certainly don't want that. So yeah, so keep that in mind. All right. So what I wanted to do is, we've got a little bit of time left here. I wanted to give you some tips for success on each of those 4 areas. So things that you could be doing that could be prepping you for, it's like something you could be working on now, but certainly for next year. We found this as experience from the research analysis and from schools that we've spoken with. And so in these areas, each of the 4 educational or 4 focus areas for that research, and then what the survey covers, these are the things we found that works well. So if in the educational quality part, obviously this is not a big surprise, have good CFIs. If you hire really good CFIs, and provide good quality oversight by the administration of the school, the managers and so on, that is probably one of the most powerful things to make you do well in the survey, because people tend to love their CFIs. And so when it's good, they will rave about the CFI in the school. And if it's bad, they will just they will just not, it won't be nice. So really having those good CFIs and making sure that they're doing a good job, that's probably one of the most important things that you can do. We found that having a clear training path, both for the training process itself and for what happens afterwards, these are things that really help too, because then people can see that they're getting a lot of value for their money, and they see where they're going. They're seeing that they're able to accomplish what it is they want to do. And part of doing that is having a good structured and logical training program, whether could be a syllabus or it could be an alternative way of doing that, but definitely having something where I know what's coming, what I'm going to do, what's happening next. So really, really important things on that educational quality piece there. Maybe Elizabeth, did you want to talk a little bit about the customer focus side of things here, about some of the things that we've seen in the past with schools and what helps them to do it well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So your customers want to feel like they're the center of the universe, and it's actually not hard to give them that experience, but it certainly requires a little bit of face-to-face interaction, or maybe today face-to-video interaction, but you get the idea. You
Yeah.
know, don't be afraid to ask them what their experience is and what you can do better. It's really important to hear from them, and sometimes just telling you what's on their mind is all they need to make them happy. They just want to be heard. Um, that first impression when you walk into a flight school, Chris talked about being intimidated when he walked into a school. Through the years, I walked into a school or two where I thought I was in a frat house. That was a little intimidating in a different way. Make sure that when somebody comes into your school for the first time, they are greeted. Somebody smiles at them, they feel welcome. Make sure your lobby area, if you have one, is clean and tidy, not, half drunk cups of coffee all over the place. The floor is vacuumed. These seem like really simple, no-brainer things, but we also know that in the middle of running a business, and trying to manage people and trying to manage equipment and all of that stuff, some of these things can be overlooked. And of course, the expectation isn't necessarily that you do all these things yourself, but it's about training your staff. Aircraft quality, that's come up a couple of times already in this discussion. It's so important that we remember what it feels like from somebody who is not familiar with aviation. And, they're judging your aircraft by the standards perhaps of an airliner, if that's their only experience, or of a car, if that's their only experience with transportation. And some of the things that are quirky and unusual about our aircraft can be frightening or intimidating for someone who's new. And so you got to make sure that they understand the context. And then, of course, we already mentioned this, the clean and comfortable environment. Make sure your restroom is clean, your trash cans are emptied, all that kind of stuff. It's easy. It costs you really nothing to do these simple things like keeping the lobby area tidy, but it makes a huge difference in how people feel when they walk in the door.
Absolutely. And in fact, um, one comment I have on that too is I was just out this past weekend. I'm an avid musician as well, and so I love guitars and basses and all this sort of stuff. And I was out. I did a little just fun day of traveling around different music stores. And what I found was some of the small ones that I went to were some of my favorite ones. Even though they didn't have as much stuff, they were clean, they were neat, they were friendly. I went to the big ones, and I could not tell you every one that I went to 3 different large music stores, and the amplifiers were dusty, the guitars were dirty, and it was like, and I was really blown away by that. And it turned me off to the point where I'm like, I don't want to buy stuff from here. So, it's like, and it's like, I had way more stuff and a way bigger selection, but it was just, they clearly weren't taking care of that customer experience part. And that really turned me off. So
Chris, that is a great point about retail space. And this is one that we see a lot in flight schools. You may do a lot of retail in one or two areas. Maybe you do a lot of training books, or, you go through a regular inventory on charts. But perhaps you have some things in your shelves or in your display cabinets that haven't moved for a year or two. If you're going to leave them on display, make sure that they're dusted. There's nothing less appealing than seeing a 3-year-old headset covered in
mhm,
dust,
Mm.
sitting on the shelf. And it absolutely does happen. And it's a little bit like in your own home. You get used to seeing it there and you stop noticing it, right? You just don't notice it anymore. But it's a great idea to try and walk through once in a while with that fresh perspective if you were coming in for the first time.
absolutely. So it's just little things like that. The little things can make a big difference. Um, on the community side of things, the third of the 4 areas that the survey covers, the biggest thing we saw here was, it was that part I talked about at the very beginning where I walked in and I kind of felt like intimidated, like I walked into the Western Saloon. And so it's the community part, which is really what people talk about, what the customers have talked about, what the schools that do it well, they create a welcoming and involved communities. They make it so that when people walk in, it's not intimidating. They will set up like typically an appointment with them. So when they come in, they've got someone who's going to take them around and show them the airplane and show them the school and introduce them to people and make sure that they understand that acronyms, if I use an acronym, first of all, they try to be cognizant of the fact that they won't use acronyms with somebody who's new because I know that they won't know what it means. Or if I do, that I explain what it is and make it very clear that, if I ever say anything you don't get it, it's okay to not know. because there are acronyms even now that I've been in aviation now for how long, and there's even ones that pop up now that I'm like, I don't know what that one means, and I have to go look it up, or I ask. And so the biggest thing I do now is think about it at shows. People come up all the time and they're telling me like, I got this kind of airplane, and I'm fairly knowledgeable about airplanes, but I'm still blown away by they say some model, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Can you show me? And so the easiest thing there is just say, can you show it to me? They are more than happy to show you a picture of their airplane and explain to you what it is. So yeah, so letting them know that it's not a big deal to not know things. That's part of the whole process of learning and becoming a pilot. Um, and recognizing your clients' milestones like solo and cross country and all these kind of things, making it a big deal for them. And it's as simple as putting their name on a wall, or I know one school put that on the website, so people are really excited to have their name go up on the website or go onto social media, because then they can show and like, look, that's me. So it's little things that don't necessarily have to cost you anything but the little bit of time it takes to do that and to stay on top of it. But those make a huge difference in people feeling welcome and part of that community. And then there could be things too where it's like having a barbecue, or occasionally, or having things where you take a trip to the tower, or go down to ATC, or go to the local maintenance shop, whatever it might be. But these things make a big difference to them. So building that community. And then the last one is the part about information sharing. And really what this one focuses down to is just make sure they know what the heck is going on. It's the most common thing that we hear through the survey from customers is they don't know where they are in their training. They don't know what's next. They don't know, like, they were told it was going to cost this much and now they're paying more. They're spending more than they thought. So the biggest thing is be clear and honest about, this is how much it's going to cost. Show them, this is how we're going to show you, and continually show them, here's what's next, here's where you are, here's what's, that sort of thing. So they can see the progress that are being made, and also encouraging them based on, think about, I know that Jamie, I know that we've had this discussion in the past. It's like you'll get somebody who's like in that past solo phase, they're working on the cross country, and I call it the doldrums of training, because it's like you feel like you were so excited to solo, and now you feel like you've got all this other stuff left to do, like your written tests and everything, and just encouraging them by just telling them, look how far you've come. Do you remember when you couldn't even taxi, like that I was having to guard it because you almost took me into a taxiway light, and look at you now. You don't even think about these things anymore. Those are just those major things. So really sharing information and making it clear where they are and how much they have left to go, and what that cost is going to be, is a big part of seeing that.
Even letting them know what you don't know. So when you talk to them about things like cost, letting them know that it's in most cases not going to be a fixed figure, that a lot of things can affect it, and that you're going to help them get through it in the most effective and cost effective way. Setting those expectations is so important, because I think that's where a lot of times students feel like maybe they're not getting good value, or, because they don't really know what's going on or what to expect, they're not sure if you're treating them fairly or not. So just laying out those expectations early.
A big part of that is I used to teach, I taught high school for a long time, and so I taught economics, and there's a thing called asymmetric information, where it's like one person has a lot of information. It's kind of like when you go to buy a used car, who owns the used car has a lot of information about that car, and you're the one that doesn't have any. And so you're always like suspicious of like, what's wrong with that car? What did you do to it, that I don't know? And that's a big part that we deal with in aviation. It's a very asymmetric relationship for somebody new, in that sense of like, you know everything and I know nothing. And so it's really, I think you can empower your customers and make them feel a lot better and make them even more loyal to you by bridging that gap and helping them get the information that they need. In fact, some of the schools I know that do well, they will purposely tell them, say, when you come to visit my school, that's great, we'll set you up, and please go visit the other schools. Here they are, go look at them, because they were confident enough in what they do to say, go visit them and find the right school for you. It's like, but obviously we encourage you to come, we'd love to have you come back here. But they often find that they'll go visit those other schools and they won't have that experience, and they'll come back to them saying, you guys did it right and I want to train here, so don't be afraid of this. So that's really a key part of what the winners, what those folks that do well have found.
Mhm.
The wrap up to that is, what's the secret sauce of doing well in these awards and this program? And as you can see here, I love this summary, which is, it's a laser-like focus on customer service. I am going to make it the best experience that I possibly can for you, focusing on that. hiring the right people when it comes to CFIs and staff. I told you
That's a
about that
big
one school that had great CFIs, but their staff was just really rude. And so they either trained them and got it fixed, or they got rid of them and got people that were going to do a good job for them. Because that's key, because you got to figure when they first walk in, they're the ones making the first impression for your school. Having a structured experience, something that people can clearly see where they are, they can see where I'm going, they can see how much is left. Huge part of it. Fostering the community, that atmosphere, making them feel like part of the aviation family. Safety has to be a priority. I know. I had a conversation with somebody recently. It might even have been Jamie, but just talking about how they had heard stories, horror stories from folks that were training elsewhere, and they felt afraid flying with this person or this school because of the things that they did. Always make safety a priority and
Got
show what we're doing to make that happen.
a few
And
emails
then,
like that.
yeah, have you go ahead, Stephen?
Gotten a few
Got some
emails from, yeah, people about schools saying, "Oh my gosh." Well, make sure you fill
Exactly.
out the survey. Let us know.
Exactly. And there's no reason for that to happen. And then emphasizing the value and the quality of what it is we're doing. Because we know it's expensive, but you put it in terms of this is the same as buying a motorcycle or buying a jet ski or something. It costs about the same as getting your private, but look at what you get out of it. Now I can go anywhere in the country or potentially even anywhere in the world. So those kind of things. All right. AOPA.org/FT survey is where you want to go to find out more, to check it out. I wanted to open it up for any questions or anything else that anybody might have, or comments too. If you've seen something here, you didn't know about it, or you have questions for us as the team that runs it, I just wanted to open that up and let you guys have it. And yep, it's Jamie says, yep, it was me. And then if there's anything else that's like you're wondering or other things that we can help you with too, feel free to do that as well. And of course, there's our email address too, ftinitiative@aopa.org.
Well, Jamie, that the customer in Jamie's comments here, she says one person videoed the flight because she wanted evidence of her death because she thought she was going to die with this CFI. So I hope that's the exception and not the
Oh
rule, and I'm
boy.
sure it is. But yes, having the right people and having them properly trained and making sure that not only that they know what they're doing, but they know how what they're doing affects their customers, right? Because your CFI may be a pro at spins, but taking somebody up and putting them into a spin on their third lesson is a really bad idea. And those are, those are the kinds of things that you don't want to allow to happen. And that's where good training comes in.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm curious to know is maybe even just we could use a show of hands as a little thing where you can raise your hand. I know in teams here, how many folks think that they're going to do this if they haven't already, thinking that they're going to potentially participate in the survey or encourage your folks to take it?
Raise your hand if you are already doing it too, so we can
Sure.
have a sense of how many of you are going to engage this year.
So I see Jen. Very cool. And then for anybody else that's wondering about it, if you're still not sure, please feel free to ask questions. Throw it up, put it in the chat, or just let us know.
Yeah, there's a ton of information at the website link you've been talking about too. There's a lot of resources there to explain it in more detail, provide some of the marketing and advertising stuff for it. There's all kinds of things there.
Yeah. And to be clear, there is no charge. This is free. We provide these report cards
Yep.
for free.
Doesn't cost
We
anything.
make no money off of it. It's literally just something we're doing, trying to help you guys out, and hopefully it's of value to you. And don't be afraid to give us feedback too. If you find something you participate in it and you find like, hey, it would really be helpful if you did this, we will listen, because we've done that in the past. We've made changes based on suggestions that we're given, and we're like, that's a good idea, and we'll incorporate those. So we very much want to do that for you.
Mhm.
Okay. Please feel free, if you have any questions pop up. I'm just going to go ahead to the last one right here, which is the other part is just tell us what it is you need when it comes. Now, we've got some upcoming topics we're planning. The next couple of months are, and look at this. See this? Got to do it. Doesn't do spell check for some reason. Maximizing social media is an upcoming topic. We're going to do this over the summer, and then getting the most from your insurance. So right now we're doing securing guests, which is why we don't have the
There's
exact
this
month
solid
scheduled out
dates.
yet.
Bring
Yeah,
in the experts on these ones.
yeah, but these are topics that we saw that came from folks asking us. This is something that would be helpful to me. So please let us know if there is anything you think would be a useful topic. So we got, do you know if Redbird migration is going to happen this year? We know that it is going to happen. We're waiting for an announcement from Redbird. I know that they had they were talking about doing it partially virtual. They were talking about potentially a schedule change. We don't know yet. So, but we do expect an announcement from Redbird shortly. I would imagine probably in the next few weeks is what I would guess. And so, yeah, so we do know that they are going to do a migration. So the question now is just, is it virtual? Is it in person? And exactly when will it be? So the exact date. So we're waiting to see what happens with that. But yes, we also want to know as well. We're looking forward to it.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, in recent years, we have had the great fun of presenting these awards at the Redbird migration. And it's a really terrific environment because you're surrounded by your peers, people who are also in the flight training industry, many of whom have also participated and know what it's all about. And it's just a great way to celebrate the work that you do all year long.
And that's a great point, Elizabeth. One thing I'll mention about both that and Fazana, they're both coming up. We've got there's two conferences that we know of that are for flight training, and one is the Fazana conference, which is FSANN, sorry, FSANA, Fazana, the Flight School Association of North America. They typically do their conference in February, but they have now moved it because of COVID. They're doing it in August down in Orlando. So
Right.
it's fazana.com, I believe is the name as their website. And so that is an organization of, think of it almost, it's like an organization of flight school owners, people that run flight schools, and they get together and they have topics on business and you know, stuff with the TSA often is there, and they'll have just sessions that go along with that. So that's something to be aware of that you can check out. And then Redbird Migration. Redbird Migration is it's will it be over 70 degrees Fahrenheit? Probably, Jamie, in August in Florida. I'm going to
Yeah,
guess it's
pretty
going to
much
be
guaranteed.
steamy.
But not inside. Keep in mind, it's mostly inside. So if more than 70 is too hot for you, don't lay out at the pool. But ballrooms and conference rooms and whatnot, I think we could probably
I don't know.
keep at a good temperature.
There's a
those,
pool. They're doing it at that Rosen Hotel, so there's a nice pool there, as I recall.
I'd say some of those buildings, bring a sweater if you're going to be inside. It's
Exactly, that's very true. And then Redbird Migration is the other one that happens every year, and so that one is obviously, you know, Redbird Simulation. They put together a free conference where they will do sessions obviously on Redbird, but they do sessions again on topics, a variety of topics that are good for flight instructors in schools as well. That's usually a 2.5 day, kind of a day and a half, sort of. It's like a dinner one day, the full day, and then a half day, the last day of it. And so that one is a really good one too. So those are two good conferences for you guys to attend. So check those out. And in fact, you can find that one at just Redbird Migration. Just Google that, and it'll come right up.
yeah.
So okay, well, I'm guessing barring any questions, I want to just thank everybody for joining us today. We will have this, it is recorded, so we will post it and get this up on, I think it's on AOPA Live's channel. Is that right, Stephen?
Correct. There's a
Yeah.
playlist for these on AOPA Live's YouTube channel.
And so feel free, if you think anybody might get some benefit out of this or is interested, please share it with them. You may not want to share it with the folks right across the street from you because you don't, maybe you don't want them in the awards competition, but hopefully you'll do it anyway, just to do it. We'd love to get more people involved. So please encourage your students to do this, aopa.org/FT survey. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next month.
And good luck in the survey.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.